Marker.
All right, we are live. This is a special Hangops for November 28th, 2014. It's special Black Friday sale, 75% off, one day only.
Alright, first 20 customers.
First 20 customers get Hangops, 75% off. You get a lifetime subscription.
Yep.
Just send me 2 Bitcoins. So, hello everyone. Welcome. So, Edgar, I understand you were feeling particularly American this morning, and you went to a Black Friday sale with an oversized turkey leg in hand. And what was it you bought?
Some ammo because, what's more American than buying some, federal ammunition, some 22
On Black Friday.
on Black Friday for $20.
Nice. Nice.
As the lone non-American in this room, I don't know what to think.
It was on sale. How can you say that?
I know, that's my point. I don't know what to think about it being on sale.
It's how long will it take for that box to get spent?
About 2 weeks.
It's already empty.
You shoot it off on your way home, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
America!
it's America. You buy the ammo, and then before you even make it home, you have to use it.
I believe that's a rule somewhere, yes.
Nice.
But it's funny though, since we're in California, it's like the most restricted state for ammunition and guns, so I don't know.
So you gotta quietly shoot it off. America! America!
Yes, it's only on Fridays, and it's between 1 and 1:30.
Right.
You must be out in the desert, and there mustn't be any children within 100 miles of you.
It's like Milton in Office Space. I was told I could fire my guns at a reasonable volume from 11 to 11:30.
Yeah, don't get me started on all that. It's stupid. Stupid California laws. Silly stupid. And on that note.
Yeah, and on that bombshell, we're done. No.
Edgar, I was going to ask you, did you buy any Black Friday books?
Yeah, I saw the O'Reilly stuff. I actually got quite a big collection going already that I need to catch up on. But I don't know if there's anything new that I want to pick up.
Yeah. The Steam sale is tempting for me for games, but it's like, okay, I have enough games. I don't play some of them already.
Yeah, the nice thing though is when O'Reilly's like 50% off ebooks, it's at least 50 EPUBs take up a lot less room than 50 paperback books you're never going to read.
Yeah, that's true. Do you guys actually utilize the Dropbox feature that they have now? Or that they've been having?
No, I don't really buy tech books much anymore.
Mm-hmm. You just absorb it over the interwebs.
Via tweets, posts, and GIFs.
I actually just went through all of my tech books and either donated them or recycled them. Because they were not being read, so if they're not digital, they're out. I got rid of an entire bookcase.
Yeah, I've slimmed down and I've got like a foot or two of paperback. So.
Yeah, it's amazing how fast that stuff builds up, and I don't know. I was going through doing some cleaning of that kind of stuff, and I came across all of my computer science textbooks from university, which are mostly irrelevant, and I can't believe that's what I learned in university. Yeah, that's gotta go. Recycle that.
Do you guys ever realize that the thing that O'Reilly has, where if you give it the ISDN number or whatever it's called, that you can pick up the ebook for $5?
No.
If you legally own the book. This is supposed to be if you legally own the book.
How do you prove you legally own it? Like, take a picture of it or something?
They don't have
Honor
any
system?
check. Yeah, it's all honor system.
It's like downloading ROMs for emulators where you can only have the ROM that you actually own the game for.
Yeah.
Yeah, they totally.
Wink.
It's like back in the day when your file server was it was the offsite backup for your friend with the big DVD collection.
Yeah. Exactly.
Which reminds me, are we gonna do that whole thing again? That whole media collection thing again? I'll share my movies. You share mine. Or you share yours.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Show me yours and I'll show you mine. What?
I buy all my media on iTunes.
Well,
I don't know anything about Usenet.
Oh, buy stuff? Who buys stuff? There's Netflix.
You guys are not in Canada. Netflix. So in Canada, Netflix can only show a certain amount of content because 30% of it has to be Canadian content. So Netflix in Canada literally just sucks. Like, there's no content because 30%. There isn't very much Canadian content, so it's horrible.
Wait. Does it count if the actor is Canadian?
No, it has to be produced in Canada.
Oh, well then.
Yeah, so literally, it's like it's crap, total crap.
I've been meaning to watch. It's been showing up on the American cable system here. Canadians RoboCop TV series that was supposed to be like darker, and so.
Those Canadians. Watch out for them.
Well, you have Trailer Park Boys too, don't you?
Trailer Park Boys is from Canada, and it is an awesome show. If you guys have not seen it, download some episodes of it legally, of course. And they just put out a new movie, and it's really fantastic because it's basically the gist of it. Quickly, is they're against legalizing marijuana because it would cut into their profits. It's a great show.
How much stuff in Canada do you get that's dubbed?
Sorry?
I would imagine they would dub it, add in a few more A's and a boots. References to Hoosers.
Subtitles in French.
I watch my stuff closed captioned here, so.
Yeah.
Is that just to make sure that your son doesn't wake up?
Actually, it's a habit I picked up from the times I watched anime. It's like, this way I can have a vocal conversation going on, and I can watch the TV and read the conversation and know what's being said versus having to split in my head. Okay, somebody's talking to me, and I'm watching TV, and parsing that audio stream is difficult for my brain to handle. So,
but you can read it.
Yeah. If it's visual input, it's one stream, and audio is another.
You're apparently a better multitasker than me.
Yeah, my kids pretty much watch everything with closed captioning too. It's kind of something I've always done, so that's what they're used to. I always make them keep the volume down too, so they like being able to read. I think it's good for them. Good practice.
Hey Brandon, your kids also play a lot of Minecraft, right?
Yeah, not as much lately, but we played quite a bit.
Do they? I read something somewhere where it's kids are actually becoming more literate because they're actually spending more time on the wikis and whatnot to figure out how stuff works in Minecraft. Have you found that to be true or not?
They're not at that level yet. Like, we mostly played it on the Xbox. We haven't done it on the PC. So I haven't really unleashed them on reading stuff on the internet to figure stuff out yet.
Gotcha.
But they read quite a bit, like books. Like we, I don't know. I mean, they've spent a decent amount of time with TV and video games, but I'm often like, all right, TV off, time to read. It's quiet. We call it quiet time. They're gonna, you pick some books we're gonna read for the next hour quietly while I do something. So
Well, Dad goes away and recharges.
yeah, they're pretty good about reading. Like usually before going somewhere, they bring a book in the car and stuff. So. But yeah, but like with reading, we were talking about tech books a little bit ago. I never like was a cover to cover tech book reader. It always seemed like my tech books were more like reference, and I feel like more and more like that has shifted to just online. Has like the amount of like basic level resources that are available online has gotten better. Stack Overflow and stuff like that. I feel like there's a lot more like I'm like, wait, how do I do like Ruby G-sub again? How do I like to get rid of a new line or whatever? Like I can Google that, whereas I might have been like crack open the Ruby, the pickaxe book a few years ago. So I don't know, like I feel like I've just like less and less even gone to tech books. Even like at Mozilla, right, with O'Reilly Safari, access to Safari, and like I would use that a little, but even over time, I found myself using like electronic tech books less and less.
So, Brendan, a question I would pose is, are you using the internet as a replacement for like quick reference material, or are you still consuming like conceptual ideas from books that are meant to be read cover to cover? Because back in the day, we would always just crack open the here's how to write BASIC, and that was all you had. And you did read it cover to cover, because in chapter 27, you finally got some like arcane knowledge that was suddenly like, oh wow, that's the real thing that I should know. Whereas if you had just popped over to the index and found the function call and all the thing that you were looking for, then you may not have gotten that far.
I think it's mostly the internet for both for me. I don't know. I've never like really been like cover to cover with tech books, which is funny because I read a ton of fiction. Like on average, probably two novels a week is my like average. Like a lot of sci-fi and fantasy. But like I don't know. I've never like cover to cover with tech books. I've like read chapters and stuff. Like I had a Server 2003 networking book. One of the O'Reilly ones that like it had a chapter on DNS and a chapter on IPsec, and like I ended up reading those like at lunch or something, and like for some reason like those chapters like made those things click for me. It was like suddenly it was like, okay, I got the whole like how the hierarchy of DNS and stuff, and like the same thing with like IPsec. I was something like, oh okay, so there have been like chapters of books that like turned out to be like really valuable, but I don't know, like I think like you Google for quick reference, and like arcane stuff I think you just pick up. It's like sort of just in time, almost like jitting it through Twitter or Google or IRC. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
what do you think?
I think that a lot of books are written poorly, and that's unfortunate because tech books are meant to kind of expose you to the technology or concepts that the author is trying to convey. And I think it makes a whole lot of sense when you say that a couple chapters kind of clicked it, because the entire book had a whole lot more subject matter that you probably didn't need at the time, and the point where you did pick up the book and seeked out that chapter is kind of where we turn to today, to the internet. It's like I want that particular subject matter. And I want it to be kind of pre-chewed, concise, and get me the things that I need to do because I'm busy and have stuff to do, which I think differs completely from reading fiction novels and nonfiction, like whatever recreational reading matter one has, where you don't typically think of a complex language book as recreational reading. Right, or an operational playbook on how to run JBoss. Like, no, you do that in the context of typically a task or a project that needs that. So the author will typically compose the kitchen sink, if you will, and throw that at you in hopes that you'll be able to derive some insight and know how to use it. But it's typically too much at the wrong time. That's how I feel. I do not have a
agree.
good example of a technical book that I liked.
The only time that I've ever in my past read a technical book from cover to cover was when I was grounded and I couldn't get on the computer.
Did you learn anything while you were
Yeah.
grounded?
I read the Steal This Computer book, Volume 4, and then the one that McAfee wrote of computer security and antiviruses.
Yeah. So, I mean, on the idea of like quick referencing, I heard about a programming with paper class going on, where it's like a 4 or 6 week session where you come and you do not use a computer. You learn programming concepts. You learn how to use pen and paper to actually get the concepts down in your head, because ultimately, like, we write programs and then give them to computers to run. But the whole debugging process, like if you can debug your own program on a piece of paper with no like errors or Stack Overflow, then you can probably do more longer.
Yeah. I got sprung that on an interview question once. I had to whiteboard out a Puppet function, and whiteboarding it is like insanely hard when you don't have any other resources.
Yeah, nothing to reference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't get to use the Googles.
I mean, but on the flip side of that, right? Who do you really want to hire? Somebody who can find all the information very quickly, or someone who knows everything about one thing that they can call it up with no trouble?
I'd rather somebody that knows how to reference things, so you can be more resourceful myself. But I value generalists, so.
I think that's where a large part of the conversation goes, is generalism versus specialism, right? If I was looking for a hardcore kernel tweaker, then I absolutely want them to be able to call up some tweaks and stuff from memory and be able, or like a back-end Java developer, like be able to whiteboard a function and all those fun things.
Maybe some of that is the day-to-day difference between a development focus and a operations focus, in terms of like a little, more the interrupt-driven break fix versus sort of like, focused on like one language, feature set, maybe one or two runtimes, kind of.
If you're a SRE person and taking care of a web service, you probably are expected to know off the top of your head the HTTP status code and how to parse log files and where they are. It's what you need to do every single day is what you're going to have ingrained in your head, because you do it every day, and then it's so it's like, okay, I need to do this once every week, once every month. It's like, okay, let me go look it up because I don't have to do it.
Well, yeah, and those are the kind of tasks where it's like you choose to purge them from memory because they're like they don't need to be there all the time, right? Like take notes and move on. So.
So I guess that brings up of a kind of a, is there going to be the more focus of operational specialist?
I think classically there's been like NetOps and DBAs, are the two, like, I think classic operational specialists.
It's at my place we have NetOps, the database engineering, we have SecOps, we have SysOps, and then application engineering. And so we silo off to different areas to know, okay, not everyone needs to know about this capacity alerts. sysops should be taking that, except maybe the database engineers get it for the database servers. And then sysops doesn't care if the application is down. They just care, is SNMP working? Am I able to connect to the system?
I agree with your son about SNMP. Yeah, I don't know. I think what's kind of interesting is for a lot of us moving into a reality of being in, say, AWS, right? And if you're working on an infrastructure that's looking like a distributed system, you have engineering practices so that your different services are fairly, horizontally scalable. Your web, your different maybe web and application tiers. You're doing like workers, message bus, something like Cassandra or React or like a sharded MySQL. Your focus is actually shifting back more to development. What we classically think of as sort of development. It's your engineering automation instead of maybe as much like application code, but it's like I'm thinking a lot of my day is writing chef code, right? Or Ruby code that's automating. I'm automating operational engineering, not like the sort of application engineering, the end user features. But I'm still trying to build software, but it's a chef cookbook, and that's or it's Ruby code or Python code or something that's driving AWS API calls or maybe CloudFormation or it's like I've been able to abstract away or build commercially used abstractions someone else has built that takes care of a lot of the traditional data center type things, and you're trying to take an approach of rather than maybe troubleshoot that one problematic web server, you just shoot it in the head and make a new one.
Yeah.
So there are these abstractions and automation platforms that are coming out that for some people are shifting the focus and enabling, in some ways, which is coming back. It's coming full circle, right? Because the earliest operators, the earliest sysops, were very much like C and assembly and Fortran and COBOL, and they were doing their early stuff because they had to, and we've in some ways come back around to now it's abstractions that are enabling more of engineering focus, but that's also certainly very leading edge type work.
Yeah, the term you used about just shoot the server in the head and create a new one, well, we do that, and many places do that, and it's become a very awesome pattern if you can kind of tool your way around to getting to that. But then I was just thinking, as you said it, that's kind of like the motto of anyone who programs in Erlang, right? It's like, it crashed, who cares, just move on, right? So as we move to all these new concepts, or that are old concepts that are new concepts but wrapped up in old concepts around containerization and running processes, and if the process dies, just schedule a new one with your Mesos cluster. All this is Erlang as a cluster, a huge cluster of Erlang.
That sounds horrible, actually.
But I mean, it's built into the style of, all right, well, I don't care if this thing crashes, it's not going to take down the rest of the state, and I'm just going to launch another one.
Yeah.
And Netflix has done an enormous amount of tooling around doing that for their own infrastructure to be fully automated. That's what Chaos Monkey is there to do, is to exercise the crash environment, and it's kind of interesting to see it go from the very micro level to the huge macro level, but the concept kind of remains the same. I just wanted to share that that's the kind of draw that I drew that line of oh wow, this is really, nothing is new.
isn't that kind of how it goes? Like, what's old is new again, kind of thing. Like, I think everything's kind of cyclical, even outside of it. Like, the world is cyclical. We always end up somewhere with a slightly different spin on it.
What's interesting though is there's certainly I think there's still a pretty steep curve to go from like traditional data center, traditional like sort of lampish deployment to this sort of newer, more infrastructure as code type world. If you're greenfield and your engineering culture and everything is bought into the cost model of like using something like AWS or GCE, then it's not too hard. You get a good foundation, but like going from, if you have a large data center and you have an operations team that has most of their background is like, running data centers, that kind of networking, like, I'm going to have a bunch of Apache web servers, I'm going to have NFS, I've got lots of switches, like, it's a lot harder to take that and like retrofit some of these ideas into it.
I don't disagree one bit. I think that that's a reality and something that we live with, right? But the flip side of it is the people who have these skill sets, like the people who had the skill sets for like running telephone cable, like back when everybody had was ISPs and phone wires. These people ended up, either picking up new skill sets and moving to a different area, or working for like a bigger telecom or a bigger company, right? So if you have people who are like network engineers, more and more are going to possibly gravitate to some of the cloud provider type places because there they get to work on big network things, So I don't think that the people are going to have a problem. I do think there is that ramp up of like, oh, well, I've been deploying Apache, PHP, MySQL for the last 10, 15 years. I think that's kind of, you should have leveled up your game, like learned something else in that meantime. And that's just a personal responsibility that everybody should take on remaining relevant. But the change of the landscape is such that companies that are able to take on that retrofitting or starting out from greenfield and build something fresh where they can iterate and move fast, they're going to be able to move faster than their competitors. They're going to be able to bring something to market faster than somebody who's like, well, we got to wait 6 weeks for some hardware to hit a data center. Like, it's simply going to change the rate at which companies are able to deliver products. So the companies able to deliver products and then improve on them and gain the market share are likely to kind of knock out the people who are going too slow.
Yeah, Michael, you make a really good point. I know I'm joining the conversation late, family stuff, but you make a really good point, and I want to go back to what you just said about needing to level up your game. And I think that that's something that we don't necessarily, I don't think in the modern web tooling space or whatever, I don't know if we spend enough time looking at or talking to those of us who are exactly how we were N years ago. Like a few, maybe 3 years ago now, I actually, quote unquote, leveled up my game and, started using AWS and a whole bunch of things that I hadn't had any need whatsoever in the organization I was in to touch. And so, I mean, there's kind of a, well, why didn't you remain relevant? But then there's also a, we only all have so much time. And if your job functions have nothing to do with some of these modern tool sets, then yeah, that's a challenge. That's hard. Like, how do we reach out to people and make that space for them to help them get to a place where they can level up?
Well, there's a couple pieces of that, though, right? Like, there's maybe the tooling or accessibility around it, but it's more people wanting to. Like, I've got some friends who graduated around the same time as me, joined an organization, and have continued to do things the way that they always did them where I have been very ambitious to like continue leveling up my game, if for nothing more than personal growth, right? It comes down to motivation, and that these people are smart people. They're happy doing what they're doing, but they have no interest in kind of progressing, at least at the pace that I am. So you can't give somebody motivation, right? I've tried. Like I remember back in the day, I literally dropped like an ESX server in my buddy's basement. I'm like, okay, you got to start playing with. There's VMs on there, play with it, right? This is like pre-AWS, and it literally sat there and collected dust until recently. I was like, hey man, let's throw that thing out or recycle it. Like, it literally never powered it on. You can't like. It didn't get any easier than that. It was literally powered on. VMs are there, right? I built like a lab or a little like lab environment for him because I really wanted to help him get there, and I thought like maybe it was like a technical barrier, so I would give him those tools, and all he would have to do is then like plunk himself in front of like a keyboard and do it. That didn't work, right? So like it's clear that like for him, he has no interest in doing that. It's just not his motivation. So
You can lead a horse to water.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Bridget-
what motivated you? I mean, I know for me it was I decided to take a job in a completely different environment, and then I absolutely had to. It was sink or swim, right? But like, what motivates everyone else to kind of make that giant change? Especially if, I mean, shit, I worked at ISPs in the '90s. I think maybe some of us did, and like, yeah, it's a completely different world now. So what motivates you?
For me, it's just I get really bored of doing the same thing, right? So I just like playing with new shit. So yeah, playing with new shit is my motivation.
I think a really interesting kind of aspect that you'll find is whenever you get a group of us type people who are helping the internet, build and become the new world order, and et cetera, and world domination. Some things you'll find are that everybody comes to it from a different path. No two people pretty much walk the same path and get here. But there are certain aspects of personality traits that many of us share a very common baseline of kind of inquisitiveness and a desire to understand how things work. Whereas the people who are stuck in that day-to-day job, who are very perfectly happy to do, they were interested in, oh, this sounds like a good job. I should learn how to do this. I'll get a nice pay. I'll get a nice annual bonus. I can do all the things I can do, and I can go home at 5 o'clock. A lot of us don't share that same kind of attitude towards the world. So if you have that bug in you of, I want to understand how this works. I know that it's within my grasp. I just have to reach out and get it. That's kind of the self-motivation to then do this outside of a job scenario. Many people I know have picked up the skills that got them their current job that they're happy with when they weren't working at this job. They were working something else, and they were like, well, I'm going to tinker around with this for hours and hours and hours until I get it, and then that's something I can use.
Yak shaving addiction. There might be a 12-step program for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
think, and actually you touched on something I see probably as a common trait as well, and that's the ability to kind of understand why things do what they do, right? That hacker mentality. I'm pretty sure we all share kind of that hacker mentality. It's really cool that, like, I remember the first time I was kind of around people that were talking about the whole like idea of being able to spin up compute resources like in AWS. I was like, how the actual F does that work? And that's awesome, right? Like it's just like if you start changing the mindset of like we were talking about before, being able to literally like, oh, that web server's not working, boom, let's get a new one, right? When you first introduced that, some people are like, yeah, that's whatever. But I think all of us were probably like, wow, that's like, think about the potential, and then you dig into it, right? Like personal or for work. I agree with you. I always kind of chose the personal route because the places I've worked haven't always aligned with where I believe like computing should go. So I've done a lot of it in my personal time. I've been in places that were good and places that weren't so good. So we probably all have.
That touches on something really interesting though, which is that whole idea of the GitHub resume. Like there are going to be people who are doing interesting stuff and are interested in learning new stuff, but don't necessarily have the luxury of a ton of personal time to sink into these projects. So what do we do in that case?
That's my biggest problem right now is I don't have a ton of personal time. I'm up at 6:30. I'm out the door by 6:30 in the morning, and I don't get home till well past 8 o'clock. And by which time I am burnt out. I just want to take a shower, have some dinner, go to sleep. You know.
So I mean, there's a couple pieces of advice that I would try and provide and say, like, you know, if you're driving, then focus on driving. But if you're on a bus, you know, bring a laptop. But there's always weekends. There's always time. And what really drives it home for me is what the priority of it is. If your job is not allowing you opportunities to grow and learn, then you may want a different job. Many employers have built in, you know, some like education time. Some places have 10, 20% personal time, so that you can work on a project that's not directly affecting your work, but something that will afford you the opportunity to try something new and learn.
You're channeling Nathan Harvey. Your job sucks. Quit your job.
Yeah, well, he and I see eye to eye on that very frequently. I keep telling my sister that she should quit her job. But a lot of people just, you know, are at that spot where they're, you know, thinking, well, I have some skills, but I'm betting nobody else out there wants these skills because they've got these other skills listed on these job applications, and I don't have all of them. Maybe I should wait until I level up my game until I apply. Here's a huge secret. Job requirements are way overbloated, and they're, you know, anybody who's writing a position is hoping that you'll match 1 out of the 20 listed.
Yeah. I was going to say that actually. I'm like, as somebody who's hired, yeah, that's like the ideal candidate that doesn't exist, but if you can get like half or 75% of that, that's amazing. Right?
Right.
This is actually something that's really interesting because I've seen, and I've actually felt this imposter syndrome thing myself, but I've seen a lot of research that says that women are less likely to apply if they don't have everything on the list, whereas a lot of guys will just say, you know, I have 40% of them, why not give it a shot? And so I'm trying to make sure that we're writing our job ads. They're not perfect, but I'm trying, and I'm also advising other people to, like, write them more like the job ads you see that say, hey, we really care about you having an inquisitive sense of, you know, wonder, depth of inquiry, and trying to solve problems. Bonus points for each one of these additional things that you have, instead of going for the you must have this giant list.
Yeah.
Because that's more realistic to those of us who have hired. That's more realistic anyway.
Yeah.
I don't expect people to be experts in Postgres, MySQL, Cassandra, and Oracle.
Yeah.
But if you have all of those, that'd be awesome. Like, I kind of want to sit down and talk to you, but.
Why are you hating on HBase and MongoDB, man?
Really, you should only be hiring for this right here.
Yeah, actually,
The only expert you need to hire for. But no, so one of the thoughts that's been rolling around my head for the last few minutes as we're talking about this is, as a community, right? I'm going to brand us all members of the DevOps community. So you're now inducted, whether you like it or not.
I'm not certified yet.
There's a GitHub repo for that, for your GitHub resume. So are there patterns that those of us who are further to the right on this, you know, bell curve, we'll say, of cloudiness, are there patterns that we can sort of try to distill and give to the community and give to folks who are new, but you know, are trying to figure out how they go, especially around like stuff they can implement in their existing organizations? Like, one that comes to my mind right away is you know, configuration management. Like, you should, you know, implement a configuration management tool and get really good at it. It doesn't matter if it's Salt or Chef or Ansible or Puppet or, you know, Stack or whatever it is. But like, if you can adopt one of those tools, if you can like get used to thinking and with those kind of abstractions, then that's going to really benefit you. Get good at a dynamic programming language, Python, Ruby, Perl, PHP. Like get good at one of them. Get good at writing scripts, maybe little web apps in one of them. Because realistically, once you know one, it's not that hard to learn another.
I'd also add on that as you're doing them, commit them to GitHub. Let the world see it. It doesn't have to be awesome, but let the world see it, right? Because I know that if somebody's applying for a job that I'm hiring for, I'm probably going to Google their name, right? And if I see a GitHub repo, that's awesome, right? That's some reference material that shows some level of confidence and willing to tinker.
And
great. It just shows a try, right?
I was just going to say, get familiar with probably Git. I mean, I guess Mercurial if you really want to, but some kind of distributed version control system. Because if you've spent all your time with CVS and SVN or whatever the Windows equivalents might be, you're probably not going to be comfortable in some of the paradigms that a more modern tool using shop uses. So get at least a little bit comfortable with something like Git in your spare time. Or, convince your organization that maybe instead of shell script .back, .person's name, .date, they could maybe use GitHub instead.
What's wrong with .back, .date?
I've totally been guilty of that, but it ends up you spend a lot of time using find and mtime.
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Edward, you are really clever. I agree with you.
Yeah. I think kind of the ideas here that are kicking around are pretty good. Like Brandon said, absolutely learn a programming language, right? That's something that is key. We write code in whatever scripting language, dynamic language, whatever you want to call it this week. We all write stuff, and what it is stuff that we want to use. And if you make good stuff, other people want to use it. As to config management and Git and pretty much any other tool-specific insert name here, I would argue that by learning those, don't learn Git to learn Git. Learn Git to learn version control concepts. Learn config management, like Brandon said, to learn the concepts and abstractions around managing resources. And then I would go one further and say, pick up some ideas about the continuous integration / continuous delivery, panacea, where if you can grok how to move something all day from A to Z, and you can keep it moving through that pipeline, all the little bits which are Git or Puppet or whatever in the middle can be swapped out, as long as you understand how, at the end of the day, you do want to put meat into one side of the grinder and get sausage out the other. All the stuff what's inside the grinder can be swapped out and replaced. So if you become the world's biggest expert at Chef, that's cool, but not if you want to swap Chef out with something else. So then you become less relevant to a certain degree. You get the ideas of abstractions and programming in Ruby, but the ability to be able to move concepts and ideas through a pipeline to get them from A to Z quickly will pay off more than being the best expert at a given tool.
And I think there's two sides to it. I think as those of us who are in the community and more advanced need to, and I think I'm thinking in terms of what we're talking about at DevOps days and in the hallway and in our talks and things. Focus on what are the concepts, what are the key concepts people should be learning, what are the abstractions, and then that's that's at the talk, at the talk level, and then at the personal conversational level, helping people that are new figure out what is maybe the right fit for their environment. Maybe if they're a Django shop and they know a little bit about Python, then maybe something like Salt or Ansible is a good place for them to start because it is written in Python. So that'll be a faster on-ramp to them. If it's a PHP shop, maybe it's 51, or 6 of one, half a dozen the other. I think the other side too, though, is those of us who are in positions to hire, try to, as Bridget was saying, distill our hiring wants onto the concepts, but even more importantly, redo our interviewing to interview about the concepts and not the, it's like I was having a conversation with a friend it was last week, I think, and he was sort of talking about how do you drive like positive change in an organization. And I was saying, like, you have to sell on features, not implementation details. Like, you want to focus from, like, all right, what are the features we want? Like, if you're, like, saying, like, maybe you're using something that's using, like, RRD and you really want to bring in graphite. Like, you want to sell, like, what are the features we need? We want, like, self-service metrics. We want people to make their own dashboards. We want easy integration with alerting. Like distilling something into the features, and that's also what we want to hire. We want to hire for someone that knows concepts, essentially, like, the features of their knowledge. Do they understand configuration management? Do they understand why, like, having automated machine deployments, automated networking and security changes, automated load balancing, why those things make sense? Have they maybe implemented one or two of those in a data center? They've done what they can. Maybe they just, like, rebuilt their Pixie deployment time and got their machine deployments down. And they deployed an HA proxy, but their switch stuff was still manually just because it was hard to automate. Those kinds of things of like
that's hot proxy. It's not
hot proxy. I'm sorry. You know what I mean? Like we want to learn how to hire for features, and then at that skill set and interview for that. So it's like we test someone's knowledge of config management. Do they want to be able to be say, I just want MySQL, and have the tool put that there, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, definitely. I think, Brandon, you're totally right. And also just the sort of thing that somebody might not even think is a big deal. I was speaking with this woman who had started a new job and set up her Mac for the job with Ansible because she thought that was less annoying than, configuring absolutely everything by hand. And I was like, she's local in Minneapolis. I said, that's amazing. You have to come to our infracoders meetup and talk about it. And she's like, oh, it was no big deal. That's imposter syndrome right there, is thinking that that's not a pretty cool thing that other people are going to want to hear about. They're definitely going to want to hear about that.
It is kind of a big deal. That's really great. Yeah.
Well, that's actually also a good example of where you could get started. Manage your own laptop with Puppet or Chef. If you can afford it, get a $5 a month DigitalOcean box. If not, maybe just run a virtual box. Like if you're deploying on Linux, try to maybe Puppetize or Chefetize or Ansible-ize a local development environment.
With Docker.
Yeah, boot to Docker. Well, that's actually Docker. I think is a great one of we talk about how do we retrofit or how do we take these cloud computing ideas to the data center. Docker, and as we solve durable storage and complex networking and stuff along with it, Docker is a technology that you can put in a data center, and you can start to get that more dynamic infrastructure experience, right? And if anything, it's better. It can be a lot faster than rolling an AMI versus rolling a Docker container, But like Docker and maybe something like putting CoreOS on your hardware and some of the stuff like Flannel and Open vSwitch, some of the stuff that's coming with that opens up a lot of opportunities to apply this stuff in a data center. And other things too, networking has always been one of the really hard pieces to automate. There's some really interesting vendors now, Cumulus and I'm forgetting the big one. It's the one that everyone loves. That's like Linux switches. You can chef them.
Juniper?
No, not Juniper.
Arista?
Arista, yes. Arista, they're like the granddaddy of software switches. There's stuff like that. Maybe, especially maybe if you're in maybe you only have half a dozen racks. Maybe you could budget maybe you get that in the budget. It's we're gonna refresh our switches with Arista switches or Cumulus network switches. And I'm gonna bring in the Foreman, right, which is kind of the successor to Cobbler, so I can make it super easy to deploy to hardware, and then maybe I'm gonna figure out could I use Docker in development, or even just could I KVMitize everything or something. There are ways to if you think about the concepts, right, like I want fast automated deployment of my operating system to a running machine. That can be done in a Pixie booting in a data center has been that forever. I want to
easier now.
Yeah, and it's easier. There's stuff like IPXE, and there's a lot of really cool tools. Like if we can distill this stuff to concepts, and not just like I want to make an API called AWS, then we can like come up with some of these things to where like if someone could apply 2 or 3 of these things to their existing infrastructure, then not only are they going to improve their lives, but then they're going to learn these concepts. And then that makes them more hireable. That levels them up.
Well, I guess this is as good a place as any for a plug for sysadvent. I know a lot of the stuff in there last year was pretty helpful along these lines. And I have the honor of day one this year, so I have a little piece with anecdata about Docker and what we do with Docker in production. And so like maybe if we all keep putting information out there like that, people will have something easy and small and manageable to kind of get their minds around.
You're at Drama Fever now, right?
I am at Drama Fever. We are a streaming video site.
Okay. Are you in AWS?
We are 100% in AWS, and we use Docker extensively in production. And I wrote about 2,400 words in Markdown about that last week that you will be able to read Monday.
Oh, that's exciting. Especially for me, because like I'm just trying to actually play with that. Last week, so Lookout does 2 or 3 hackathons a year, and one of them is we do Hacksgiving, right? And so our Hacksgiving project, the one I worked on, and I blogged about it a few days ago. I guess just a couple days ago. Wow. Anyway, it was first we want to start with Deis, right, which is sort of a Heroku-like-ish thing that runs on top of CoreOS. But one of its limitations, I guess it's a design goal right now, but it only supports HTTP-enabled services at the routing layer. And so it's like, okay, that's good, but I'd wanted to like do Kafka and Zookeeper. So it's like I was experimenting with like putting those on top of CoreOS, sort of in a Dockery world. And just a quick experiment, but like there's a lot of questions: complex networking, durable storage, persistence, like a lot of like how do you figure those things out? So I'm like, curious to see how people are tackling that, or maybe punting on it. Databases are just in metal. But yeah, and this stuff is that's really cool. And yeah, sysadmin is I think really good for that. Mike, you guys are doing some Docker stuff. So are you on CoreOS or just Docker?
So we are not on CoreOS right now. We're using a bit of Docker here and there. Nothing too critical because it's still a very young and somewhat immature thing. So we use it predominantly for like build systems and a couple one-off services that we run out of the critical path to keep us informed of other things. Like we do monitoring of monitoring. So it's kind of important to do that.
But to be fair, you are at Datadog, so there is some monitoring of monitoring going on there by nature.
It kind of has to be the case, right? Who watches the watchers? I think, Brandon, you want me to talk about that at some point, and I think that's scary. Because you'll find out that we're all watching. But for the Docker stuff, like it's such a new idea that it's one of those things where like when I started out with Chef, I don't know, like 3 years ago, there was so much unknown, but there was this really cool kind of primitive layer that was this like, oh, this is going to be great. This is going to be interesting. I'm going to figure out how to do it, and then nobody knew how to do anything. We all just sat and tried to figure it out and worked on it and hack on it. And it's kind of like, just like a lot of things. You poke at it, you try it, you get rid of it, and then you try it again. And, with Chef, it was actually harder to do because it wasn't just software, it was actual systems, and we were on hardware. So the first thing we had to do was actually get a whole cobbler Pixie boot system so we could turn around hardware nodes in 6 minutes to do like a full reprovision cycle. Oh, that screwed up. Let's just try it again. And because Chef was so new at that point, we made a ton of mistakes. And then, 3 years later, still digging out of holes that we were on. This is not a Datadog. This was a different company. And then, but it was. I look back at it now, and it's like we were fools for picking up such a brand new technology and trying to run production with it, and we did it anyways because it solved the problem. And I see the same thing happening with Docker right now. Is it solves a very particular set of problems. It still is missing an enormous amount of things, like Brandon said, with the networking and durable storage. But it's still this kind of like attractive area where you can create a very isolated system, a very clear-cut. I know what's going on here. There's only going to be one process. It's only going to do one thing, and it becomes this need for early adopters to help figure out where the project will go and what pieces are still needed to be built, and that's how things get built.
And that would probably put Drama Fever in that category, since I actually looked back to see when we started using Docker in production, and yeah, it was even earlier than I thought. I mean, we've been using it in production since October 2013. So.
Wow, that is early.
I mean, I think as we evolve using new things, like it's going to be the natural kind of bell curve evolution where you have your early adopters trying out the new fancy, the hot shiny. They're going to make all the mistakes that like a finance company can't afford to make, right? And they're going to help drive that product into a better reality, hopefully succeeding while they do it. And then there's, at the much slower adoption, or the more conservative adopters will then need to figure out, how that actually maps into the problem spaces that they're trying to solve.
Yeah. So we normally try to keep these to about an hour. Where I think it'd be maybe kind of interesting to wrap up is because I think all of us, and I've worked with 3 of the people on this panel in the past.
I'm sorry.
No. So at least for half of us, I know we have backgrounds in like what I would call traditional data center lampish environments, and it sounds like Mike and Bridget, you do as well. I know Jake does too. Anyway, what I'd love is for each person to take a couple minutes and talk about what are the things that you were able to implement in a more traditional data center environment that sort of are these newer, like, cloudy, agile kind of concepts. Like what things did you have success with that made your life better? Just sort of, close on that as some data points for maybe someone who's at the beginning of thinking, like, they're trying to figure out, like, what can I do to make my day better? Because I just don't have a lot of time outside of my day to play with better. We'll start with you, Bridget, and kind of work our way from left to right.
Sure, thanks, Brandon. So in a previous life at the University of Minnesota Supercomputing Institute, we had, as one would imagine, a lot of bare metal. It was all bare metal, lots and lots of metal. But we had one employee in particular that I had on my team, John Vestrom, shout out to him if he's listening, who was really forward-thinking, and this is like 2006 or so, I think. He got us set up with Puppet, and also at the same time, a couple of people on the team were excited about using Zen for virtualization. So even though we had, racks and racks full of old Suns and Dells and all sorts of stuff, just getting the ability to spin up and then destroy VMs ourselves internally, and then getting a little bit more control of our configuration, so there wasn't just that one old Solaris box that only one person on the team knew anything about. Both made a huge difference in terms of our quality of life.
So Brandon, you might have to read out, because I don't know if we all have the same order.
Okay,
So you might have to call out order if you want.
Chris Evans.
It's alphabetical.
Okay.
It's alphabetical from previous Hangouts, but it's some of the stuff that I think I brought in was, it's like I came into the company and they had some Linux stuff, but they over the years grew more and more. And it's like when I first started there, I had no knowledge I knew Linux, but not installation, not data center system. So I would go down with a Red Hat or a CentOS CD, pop it in, and answer all the questions. And I then learned it's like, okay, there's Anaconda, there's Kickstart. I can have TFTP, or I can dump this file on a web server, punch in a few things, and it'll configure the box the way I want it to be. And that's helped automate that sort of setup. And then later on, other employees came on, got Cobbler set up, so it was Pixie boot the box. And then we were able to bring in Puppet, and it's like, okay, instead of, okay, we need 50 copies of this VM, okay, let's shut it down and tell Zen Center to make 50 copies and re-IP them and rename them all. It's, well, okay, let's use Puppet to ensure the state that we want it to be. And it's like, so those sorts of customers that deserve the investment of, we want this box, we're going to need lots of boxes. We would Puppetize their configs and Puppetize their setup. And so that's what I was able to bring in, and now I'm somewhat stagnant. I need to up my game, and probably do it for personal reasons. So that's where I need to head off on. So,
okay.
Other Chris, I assume.
Yeah, Tara.
Okay. Yeah, I actually have a kind of a similar story to Bridget's. I was in a place that kind of had some old school ways of doing things, and they were a Perforce shop, which I wasn't so keen on. So, like most of the operations, well, all the operations group that I was in they were all like kind of the old school neckbeards that really just made the .back date format for scripts and managed them that way. So the two things that I kind of stuck in place was I introduced at the time I used Mercurial. You could use Git or Mercurial, I don't care, but distributed version control for managing config files, scripts, things like that. That actually became pretty successful. And then this was early days of Puppet. I was like, wow, there's this really cool thing called Puppet. So we kind of pivoted that into doing config management, right? So config management with some kind of distributed version control underneath it, and it was remarkably successful. And we had so many less outages because every file matched, and it was just super trivial to implement, and it was a nice, sane way of doing it. It's really easy to wedge into even a big organization's infrastructure.
Edgar.
So I'm probably going to go a little bit farther back than just complete automation, but back a few jobs back, when I first started at the data center company, they didn't really have anything for virtualization, and I was being asked to basically bring up CRM boxes and stuff for internal use, like wikis and things like that. And I took it upon myself just to build out, a simple VMware box that, I forget what the free one was, vSphere or whatever it was, and just starting off with that and just learning the basics of virtualization that way, and understanding how it works with storage and networking, and it wasn't anything complex at all, but it was just enough to get the foundation in, and then from there also playing around with like different versions of Linux and figuring out what works best and what's nicer and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, just taking that time to just build out something that you never touched before, and then try using it on small projects that you don't really care too much if it doesn't work 100%, but just to get your knowledge in, so to speak.
Okay, cool. Jake.
Yeah, I'm just a kid still. So like my first data center job, it was like 2013, just like last year. So when I came in, everything was already virtualized on KVM hypervisor. but the original guy left, and all we had was documentation in Evernote, and it wasn't, full-blown documentation. So my first task was to rebuild the whole stack on a completely new KVM cluster. So I initially just started off using Ansible. I was nudged by my CTO to just go ahead and learn Ansible because it's lightweight, it's small, it's fast, it's quick, and that added a whole lot of value to the company in itself, that we were able to spin up internal services with Ansible. And then I started to add towards the end testing. So testing all of our Ansible playbooks in Vagrant, and that was really cool. But I'm still just a young kid, just still learning. So.
Okay, Mike.
So there's so many ideas and concepts that I want to convey to anyone who's trying to start or is up against some sort of barrier that's preventing them from getting better things. But I think one of the key elements I would go with is don't try out and bite off more than you can chew. There was one company that I started at, and in the first 2 to 3 months, I tried not to do any new improvements. I tried to start listing. All right, here's what's broken. Here's what I think is broken. So that way I can reflect back on that 2 months later and say, is it really broken, or did I just not understand it? And then after I kind of figured out, okay, these are the real things that are broken, now which one do I want to tackle first? And the one that that had me the most success in a company that was extremely anti-config management. No, we don't need that. That's an extra layer. We'll just do it. We've been doing it this way forever. And the one that kind of just lit the light bulb on for the higher ups was the inclusion of automating user permissions on every build server in the dev environment, not even production, right? Just being able to say, oh, we just had an engineer leave. Oh, I just have to twiddle this file, upload it, get it out there, and now that I don't have to worry about that engineer's permissions anymore. Oh, we just hired 2 more people. Guess what? In 10 minutes, everybody is set up, and they don't have to keep poking people. Hey, can I have permissions on this box? Can I go to there? And then just having the user permissions just put in there as the simplest layer was the key to getting a ton of adoption to say, oh, this is great. We need to do this every single way for everything, because the speed involved was just negligible compared to the hand rolling of every single service that had been done prior. So start with something small, but figure out what that small thing is that you can totally tackle and win. Fight the battles you can win, and then you win the war.
That's an outstanding point. It's a +1.
So I guess that leaves me.
Yeah.
I've got a little different one from the rest of y'all. One of the big things I found myself doing pretty much every place I've started is putting more stuff in the wiki. Anytime I run into something that I have to ask someone how to do that I think should be in the wiki, I put it in the wiki. And you'd be surprised how often too, you'll see, I'm when I start, one of the things I like to do is ideally using a bug tracker, and it's I want to be emailed about all the bugs that maybe have to do with my job, at least to start. Get lots of bug mail and read all of it. Just see what's going on. And if I see other people on the team constantly giving the same answer, and it's not a link to a wiki page, I'm going to make a wiki page out of it. Oh, we need to add your data bag. So give us your public key, and give us SHA-1 or SHA-256 hash of a password to go in the JSON. And then they're like, well, how do I do that? Oh, wait, I don't have this thing installed. Well, it turns out, if you make a wiki page that's this is how to do, OpenSSL, this is how you, homebrew install this, and on Windows you grab that thing, and, make a wiki page that guides them through, to delivering the outputs that you want. stuff like that, like really simple stuff. Like you see someone like making the same Jira comment, and you suspect that they probably have it in like Evernote. And it's like, why didn't you put it in the wiki? So you can give someone a link, and then you answer like more and more questions with links. And so that's something that I've done a lot of. And it's like anytime I learn something, like all right, try to write it down. And then when I build stuff, like I'm writing the documentation as I'm building it.
So I'll say as somebody that's worked with Brandon, it's also contagious. And it's an outstanding thing to do for your coworkers. So I don't work with him anymore, but it's something that I kind of like, it's a disease I picked up from him, and it's really fantastic.
It's not always contagious, unfortunately.
Yep.
But no, it's and then ideally you evolve it to like if it's repetitive, it becomes a script, it becomes part of config management. If you have a checklist of like how you take like the stock CentOS 7 install to like your server, like make that a shell script, make it a Kickstart profile, make it a Puppet a Puppet module, like whatever fits, do that. But like just like and it's I think it's Tom Lemon is it Celli or Celli? I never remember. Tom Limoncelli I think has talked about this a lot, of that pattern, right? First you make a checklist, then you automate it, and then like you iterate on improving it, like because you maybe don't want necessarily like you automate the checklist and then maybe you like improve it and stuff, but that's but step one is often you need to write it down and capture it. And that becomes your low-hanging fruit. It's like, what is still a checklist? Go automate that. When you're like bored on a Friday afternoon, maybe
you can come to Hangops instead.
Yeah, but also like, I think it was like his the time administration for systems administrator or time management system administrators, where he was like that can be a good way to like fill some time. It's like go take something that's a checklist to make it a script, or now I would say make it config management. But yeah.
While your Docker is compiling.
Well, like that, you can turn like certain documentation into like scripts because it's technical, but there's also documentation I'm sure we've all written that is not technical. It's more about like becoming asynchronous. So like when users need something from you, they don't have to come to you. They can look at documentation, right? So I think there's like two paths for that.
Yeah. Well, and I'll also give a personal opinion. Because some of the stuff that I've documented recently was like Storm and Kafka and Zookeeper, and a lot of documentation that I wrote was just copying and pasting from the official docs. Like here's the intro to Storm. They've already written a really good one, so I'm gonna like copy a bunch of that and then like link to where the source was from, like generously, like knowingly stolen from, because it might change, but like you'd be surprised too. Like we sort of do a division of like engineering docs and operations docs. And in the engineering section, like about a service, like that's one of the things that I want to put at the top is like, what are the core concepts? What's the terminology? And like I don't need to rewrite that. It's already been written well. So I'm not afraid to just sort of like, take with a certain level of attribution. And like someone comes along like, wow, this is amazing. This is exactly what I wanted to see. It's like half of it I just copied and pasted. But like I took the time to do that. And you'd be surprised how much value that can generate, because then, a lot of it, right, is it's like a lot of good documentation is really just like it's a table of contents. It's the summary, and then you point to the deeper dive. But like if being able to pull up a single page and kind of look at that TOC and get a glean of what it is, and then drill in having everything consolidated there is it's like one-stop shop, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, along those lines of like the copy paste, like that's what you're doing at that point is you took the time to find the documentation. A lot of people don't want to take the time to do that. They want to go to the central location where they're used to going, and if it's not there, well, let's burn the village down. But you also took the time to kind of distill out of the hundreds and thousands of words that are on the docs to the parts that are relevant to your organization at that time. And this is something that we try to do even further. Like as we're sitting here, I'm watching one of the chat rooms of a new service being deployed, and it's one of the lead engineers is like, hey, did you double check that the docs are up to date on the wiki, as well as the alert mechanisms pointing you to the docs when they fire? Like, that way, when it goes sideways, and invariably everything does go sideways eventually, whoever gets that knows what to do next. So it's super important to encourage and engender the document what is correct culture at an organization. So kudos, Brando, and keep writing docs for your org and team and people who appreciate it.
That's something we started doing at Mozilla as well, and I thought was really useful. It's like every alert had like one of our tools developers made a little internal URL redirector thing that every alert, and so it'd be like it'd be the subdomain / and then basically the text of the Nagios alert, whatever the text of that was. And when you click that, it either looked for an existing page that had been filled out and was sort of this template of critical, what that means, a summary of what to do, or links to detailed docs on what to do, warning, etc. And if the page didn't exist, it automatically opened up the template ready to fill out in Confluence. So ideally, if you got an alert, you clicked on a link, and you didn't get a page on what to do, as you figured out what to do, you'd fill in the page and then save it. And then there was some process of where people were bugs were opened about alerts that belonged to certain teams that weren't filled out, but embedding that. And the first time I heard about it, I think it was Mark Imbriaco when he was at Heroku, talked about that, about runbook links in the alert. And I think that's a really powerful concept, actually.
Yeah, we encourage that. We do that internally for all of our alerts. They usually contain 2 or 3 paragraphs of, here are the first couple steps you should try. If you can't figure it out with this, here's the link to the deep dive wiki, and here are the 3 people that you should probably call next. That way, you don't go alone.
Yeah.
It's not safe to go alone. Take this.
Take this wiki page with you.
Exactly. All right, Brandon. Any other Hangops-y?
No, no, I don't have much lined up for December yet, so I have to see what lands.
Coffee ops.
Yeah, we're gonna do a local coffee ops thing, probably in downtown LA.
Yeah, sorry about missing the last one.
I think on the 17th. But yeah. Anyway, I think we'll wrap it up there. So thanks everyone for joining. Goodbye.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Pretty sure that's not the Olympic
crazy
gold.
person.
Pretty sure that's not the Olympic gold medalist, Michael Phelps. If it is, I guess. Anyway, thanks everybody for joining. This I had no idea what today would bring, but this was awesome. I will close on 2 key points for documentation. Formatting is your friend. Use the formatting. Bulleted, in my opinion, bulleted and numbered lists are generally better than paragraphs if you're explaining how to do something. And also, don't be afraid to just do 1 or 2 sentences and then a new line and then another one. This isn't your 8th grade essay. You don't have to do 5 sentences and an intro and a conclusion for every paragraph. Especially because people generally skim.
Nobody loves the wall of text.
No, and make good use of bold and italics because people look for keywords. So skim those keywords. Like when I document monitoring, I do a lot of bullets, but it'll be I maybe go a little overboard on what's our Xenos config is, but it'll be we're collecting this data point and it has a threshold of, and then it'll be the bold will be threshold of 5,000 file handles, and that's the bold. Because that's going to catch someone's attention, So I try to think if I was skimming this at 2 in the morning, what would I be looking for? Or if I'm ramping up on this service because I'm going to be on call for next week, what would I look for? So use your formatting, and please, for the love of God, use table of contents on every page, because then you can link people directly to the specific thing. I hate when they're here's the page, and it's 8 printed pages and there's no table of contents. I don't want to start at the top. Send me right to the thing. So whatever your thing is, and I happen to like Confluence, and I know it's not a wiki, but I still happen to like it. But like, learn its formatting and use that. That's what I want to close with.
Sorry, but
Awesome.
quick question.
Go ahead.
Do any of you guys actually add storyboards or something of that nature to your wikis as well? As to like, if you have this issue, here are the 5 steps that you got to take, and basically, it's a copy pasta.
You mean like visually?
Yeah, well, not just visually. Like, here are the 5 commands that you need to run to fix this one particular issue that.
Oh yeah, I do that all the time. Like, half of what I write is mostly code blocks with like copy and paste from shells. Yeah, no, I do a lot of like what I call troubleshooting, where it's like, and like our Kafka documentation is half like run this command, run that command, like there'll be like and a lot of it'll be like like a lot of my like 1, 2, 3s are literally run this command. Here's the command, here's example output, and those are 2 separate little code blocks, so it makes it easy to copy and paste. Now that is my preferred format for how to do stuff. And
I'm a big fan of putting the TLDR at the top too, because again, you at 3 in the morning doesn't want to read the long explanation. You want the essentials.
Yeah.
It's another thing I've done along those lines is okay. This is the command on how to do it, and here's basically a copy of me implementing it. So this is the output you'll see, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
If you don't get this output, you know something's wrong.
Yeah. No, that stuff is, and you'd be surprised. I often think like it's imposter syndrome why people don't write that down, because like they're thinking like maybe other people are thinking like, how dumb do you think I am that you're spelling this out for me? But it's the opposite. Like, the more you can communicate, the better. And I think separating things into like engineering, which is like the background, the terminology, the theory kind of stuff, and then like and then maybe more like the ops specific, and then even like breaking it a little further is like there's ops stuff, and then there's like what I think of as like the run book, which I think is a lot of what you're talking about. Is the if I get alert that this service is stopped, like step 1, log into the box. It's gonna have a host name like this. Step 2, it's gonna be managed by Upstart or Run It or whatever. So here's the command to like confirm that it's running. Maybe here's also like a PS pipe grep, whatever. And then step 3 is like, here's all the log files to look at, or ideally, a link that you can click to like your Logstash interface or your Sumo Logic interface with a save search. Like that's like next level, but just starting with listing the log files they should look at. Like that is like manna from heaven.
And that PS tree that Brandon mentions is so valuable. I know we're trying to wrap up, but I just want to say, if you have any kind of information whatsoever about what this looks like when it's working correctly, that's very nice when you're trying to make it work correctly again.
And one of the best things you can do is like when the first time you deal with an alert that's not documented, like just as you're troubleshooting, make sure your terminal history is like set to unlimited, and like just copy and paste that into like a wiki page when you're done before you go back to bed or whatever, and then like later you can come back and like slice and dice that up and make it look pretty. But just literally shoving it into the wiki, like I did that a lot when I was working with Edgar and Chris in a hosting environment, because you get paged for random stuff. And like just shoving it into the wiki, and then fixing it later. Or like the first time you do a new thing, like just that whole terminal output, paste it in there and clean it up later.
I've got a couple of temp files that are just hour-long logs of HipChat messages of like this is what was broke, this is how we fixed it, and this is how to do it again. I need to go back and clean them up, but
that's my plug for Slack. Is honestly, we just sit there and search Slack and point each other to the exact line where this was last discussed.
Right, and you can search HipChat, but like in-depth detail, like I need to go back and reference. It's much easier to have a temp file.
And my battery is dying, and my power is downstairs with the family. So I'm going to say bye to you folks.
Yeah.
So long, farewell.
Super fun.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
I will catch you on the next Hangops, but my computer is telling me it's going to. So, bye.
All right. have a good weekend. We'll see y'all next week.
Yeah.
Yep.